The stars burned cold and distant as the Kraxan fleet moved through space. Their ships were huge, each one 15 kilometers long, painted black as the void itself. They had conquered 17 star systems in 3 years. No one could stop them. Commander Vexillar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Decimator. He was tall, even for a Kraxan, with 4 arms and 4 eyes that could see in different spectrums of light. His gray skin was covered in battle scars, each one a mark of victory. He watched the planet below burn with satisfaction. The human colony on Kepler 442b had tried to fight back. Their defense fleet had lasted 14 minutes. Vexillar clicked his mandibles, which was how his species laughed. The humans were weak. They had spread across the stars too quickly, leaving their colonies exposed and vulnerable. Commander, his second-in-command Grixnor approached. The planet's defenses have fallen completely. Should we begin harvesting resources? Yes, Vexillar said. Take everything useful, leave nothing for the humans to reclaim. The Kraxan were not just conquerors, they were harvesters. They took the metals, the water, the very atmosphere of worlds they conquered. They left behind dead rocks floating in space, monuments to their power. 3 systems away, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the command center of Proxima Station. The walls were covered with screens showing news feeds, tactical data, and reports from the outer colonies. Each report was worse than the last. Another colony fallen, another fleet destroyed, another world lost. Jake was 45 years old, with gray streaking through his black hair. He had joined the Terran Navy when he was 18, working his way up through the ranks. He had fought pirates, defended trade routes, and commanded 3 different ships, but nothing had prepared him for this. Captain Morrison, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez called out. She was young, only 28, but she was the best communications officer in the fleet. We've lost contact with Kepler 442b. The last transmission was a distress signal. Jake closed his eyes for a moment. He knew the colonists on Kepler 442b. He had visited the colony 2 years ago, attended their harvest festival. Now they were gone. How many people? He asked quietly. 50,000, Amy answered, her voice breaking slightly. 50,000 lives, ended in minutes. Jake felt anger building in his chest, but he pushed it down. Anger wouldn't help now. They needed something else. They needed hope. Any word from Earth? He asked. Amy nodded, her fingers moving across her console. Admiral Jane Chen is coming. On the secure channel now. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Chen's face. She was 60 years old, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her dark eyes were tired but determined. Jake, she said without preamble. I know you've seen the reports. The situation is worse than the public knows. The Kraxan fleet is moving faster than we predicted. At this rate, they'll reach Earth's outer defenses in 6 months. Do we have anything that can stop them? Jake asked. The Admiral paused. We might. Have you been briefed on Project Defiance? Jake frowned. No, Admiral. It's our last hope, Chen said. We've been building something in the shipyards of Mars, a new kind of battleship. It's smaller than the Kraxan dreadnoughts, only 3 kilometers long, but it has weapons and defenses they've never seen. When will it be ready? Jake asked. The ship is complete. We need someone to command it, someone who understands both tactics and the importance of what we're fighting for. I want you to take command, Jake. Jake felt his heart skip. Command of humanity's last hope. It was an honor and a terrible responsibility. When do I leave? He asked. Immediately. A transport is already waiting for you. Jake, I won't lie to you. This ship, the USS Defiance, it's experimental. Half the technology is untested in real combat. But it's all we have. I understand, Admiral. One more thing, Chen added. You'll need to pick your own crew, the best of the best. People you trust, completely. After the Admiral signed off, Jake turned to Amy. Lieutenant Rodriguez, how would you like to be the communications officer on humanity's newest battleship? Amy's eyes widened. Sir, I would be honored. Good. We leave in 1 hour. I need to make some calls. Back on the Decimator, Vexillar received reports from his scout ships. The human core worlds were preparing defenses, but it was futile. Arndio, Kraxan had conquered species far older and more advanced than humans. Commander, Sensor Officer Kexara spoke up. Her voice was like grinding stones. I'm detecting unusual activity near the human world they call Mars. What kind of activity? Vexler asked. Energy signatures, very high levels. They might be building something. Vexler waved one of his forearms dismissively. Let them build. Whatever weapons they create, we will destroy them like all the others. But Kexara wasn't satisfied. She had been studying humans since the war began. They were strange creatures. These humans. They came from a single world, a place they called Earth. It was a death world by most standards, with unstable weather, tectonic activity, and countless predators. Most species that evolved on such worlds never achieved spaceflight. They destroyed themselves first, but humans had not only survived their death world, they had thrived. They had spread across the stars in just 200 years. They adapted to environments that would kill other species. They were stubborn, creative, and unpredictable. Commander, Kexara said carefully, perhaps we should approach the human core worlds with more caution. Vexler turned all four eyes on her. Are you questioning my strategy? No, Commander. I merely suggest that humans might be more dangerous than they appear. They have lost every battle, Vexlar reminded her. They have no ships that can match ours. Their weapons cannot pierce our shields. They are prey, nothing more. On Mars, Jake Morrison stood in the massive shipyard, looking up at the USS Defiance for the first time. The ship was beautiful in a deadly way. Its hull was made of a new alloy that seemed to absorb light. Weapons ports lined its sides, and strange devices he didn't recognize were mounted on the bow. Chief Engineer Danny Park stood beside him. Danny was 35, born on Mars, and had been working on the Defiance since the project began. She's something special, Captain, Danny said with pride. Graviton torpedoes, antimatter spread systems, and the Nova cannon. That last one is my baby. It can channel the entire ship's power into one shot. What's the catch? Jake asked. He knew there was always a catch with experimental technology. The Nova cannon will drain everything, Danny admitted. Shields, engines, life support. Everything goes into the shot, we'd be defenseless afterward. Then we better make sure that shot counts, Jake said. Over the next week, Jake assembled his crew. Lisa Zhang as tactical officer, one of the few people who had actually damaged a Kraxan ship in combat. Sam Carter as weapons officer, who could calculate firing solutions in his head faster than most computers. Kate Phillips, fresh from the academy but with test scores that broke records. They were young, most of them. The Kraxan had killed so many experienced officers, but Jake saw something in these people. They weren't just talented, they were determined. They had all lost someone to the Kraxan. They all had reasons to fight. As the Defiance prepared for its first mission, Jake gathered his crew in the mess hall. I won't give you a fancy speech, he said. You all know what's at stake. The Kraxan think we're weak. They think we're easy. Prey. They're about to learn differently. We are the children of Earth. We survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have ended other species. We didn't come this far to be someone else's conquest. The crew cheered, but Jake raised his hand for silence. It won't be easy. The Defiance is one ship against an armada. But one ship with the right weapons, the right crew, and the right determination can change everything. Are you with me? Yes, sir, they shouted in unison. The Kraxan fleet continued, its advance unstoppable and confident. They didn't know that in a shipyard on Mars, humanity's answer was almost ready. They didn't know that humans had spent the last 2 years studying every battle, learning from every defeat, preparing for this moment. The hegemony was about to learn why humans had survived on a death world. They were about to learn what happened when humanity's back was against the wall. The alarm siren screamed across Proxima Station as 30 Kraxan warships dropped out of hyperspace. They appeared like shadows against the stars, their black hulls reflecting nothing, absorbing everything. The station's defenders had been preparing for weeks, but seeing the enemy fleet in person was different from looking at tactical displays. Station Commander Elena Vasquez gripped the railing of the command deck. She had been given one job: hold the station long enough for the Defiance to arrive. She knew it was likely a suicide mission. The 300 people under her command knew it too. They had all volunteered anyway. All weapons online, her tactical officer reported. Plasma cannons charged and ready. Elena nodded. Wait for them to get closer. We need to make every shot count. The Kraxan fleet moved forward slowly, confidently. They had done this so many times before. Another human station, another easy victory. On the Decimator's bridge, Commander Vexler watched with all four eyes, analyzing the station's defenses. Primitive plasma weapons, Grixner observed. Their effective range is limited to 50,000 kilometers. We can destroy them from twice that distance. No, Vexler said. I want them to have hope first. Let them fire their weapons. Let them think they have a chance. Then we crush them. Fear spreads faster than any weapon. When Earth hears how easily Proxima fell, they will surrender. The Kraxan fleet moved closer, entering the station's weapons range. Elena didn't hesitate. Fire everything, she commanded. Proxima Station erupted with light. Dozens of plasma beams lanced out through space, brilliant blue and white streaks that would have been beautiful if they weren't instruments of death. The beams struck the lead Kraxan ships, splashing harmlessly against their shields. Shield strength holding at 98%, a Kraxan officer reported, sounding bored. Vexillar made a gesture with his upper right arm. Return fire. Destroy their weapons first. I want them to watch helplessly as we take them apart. The way. Kraxan ships fired their disruptor beams, purple energy that seemed to twist space itself. The beam struck Proxima Station's weapon emplacements and the plasma cannons exploded one by one. In less than 3 minutes, the station's offensive capabilities were gone. Elena watched her defenses crumble. She had expected this, but it still hurt to see. Those weapons had been their hope, however small. Now they were debris floating in space. Commander, her communications officer called out, voice shaking. The Kraxan commander is hailing us. Put him on screen, Elena said, standing straighter. Vexlar's face appeared on the main display. His four eyes studied her with what looked like amusement. His gray skin was marked with scars and his mandibles clicked as he spoke. Human commander, he said, his voice translated by the station's computers into English. You have fought bravely but foolishly. Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick. Continue to resist, and I will make you watch as we harvest your station's air, leaving you to suffocate slowly in the cold. Elena stared back at him without flinching. Commander Vexillar, I have a message for you from Earth. We don't surrender. Not now, not ever. Then you have chosen a slow death, Vexillar said. So be it. The transmission ended. Elena turned to her crew. How long until the Defiance arrives? 10 minutes, her navigation officer answered. Then we need to survive for 10 minutes, Elena said. Activate all emergency shields. Route all power from non-essential systems. If we can't fight, we can at least endure. Hundreds of light years away, the USS Defiance was pushing its quantum drive to the limit. The new technology allowed the ship to travel faster than anything humanity had built before, but it was still experimental. The ship shuddered and groaned as it moved through quantum space, reality bending around it. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the countdown timer. 8 minutes until they reached Proxima Station. The latest report said the Kraxan fleet had already begun their attack. Captain, Danny Park's voice came over the comm from engineering. The quantum drive is running hot. If we don't slow down, we might blow the containment. Can you hold it together for 8 more minutes? Jake asked. There was a pause. I'll make it work, Captain. You just be ready to fight the moment we drop out. Jake turned to his weapons officer. Sam, I want all weapons charged and target locks prepared before we exit quantum space. We won't have time for a slow engagement. Sam Carter nodded, his hands flying over his console. Graviton torpedoes loaded. Antimatter spread ready. Railguns charged to maximum. Lisa, Jake called to his tactical officer. What's our battle plan? Lisa Zhang pulled up a holographic display of the Kraxon fleet formation. They're in standard hegemony attack pattern. The dreadnoughts in front, smaller ships providing support. They're not expecting any real resistance. Then we give them something unexpected, Jake said. Kate, I want you to calculate firing solutions for multiple graviton torpedoes. Target their biggest ships first. Kate Phillips, despite being fresh from the academy, worked with incredible focus. Calculations complete, Captain. I can guarantee hits on at least 3 dreadnoughts. Back at Proxima Station, the Kraxon were taking their time. They fired measured shots, destroying shield generators one by one. The station shook with each impact. In the command center, lights flickered and sparks flew from damaged consoles. Hull breach on Deck 7, someone reported. Seal it, Elena ordered. How much longer? 4 minutes until the Defiance arrives. Elena watched as another Kraxon beam struck the station. The lights went out for a moment before emergency power kicked in. They were dying slowly, just as Vexillar had promised, Enon. The Decimator, Sensor Officer Kexara, noticed something unusual. Commander, I'm detecting an anomaly in subspace. What kind of anomaly? Vexillar asked, not really interested. He was enjoying watching the human station fall apart. It appears to be a ship approaching at incredible speed. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our database. One ship? Grixenor laughed. The humans are sending one ship to save their station? They truly are desperate. But Kexara was worried. The energy readings were massive, far beyond what a ship that size should produce. She had studied human history, their wars, their victories against impossible odds. Humans were dangerous when they were desperate. Commander, I recommend we prepare defensive formations, she said. Vexillar waved her off. One ship cannot threaten 30. Continue the attack. Space itself seemed to scream as the USS Defiance tore back into normal space. The ship appeared behind the Kraxon fleet in a burst of blue light that was visible from Proxima Station. For a moment, everyone on both sides stopped to stare at the newcomer. The Defiance was smaller than the Kraxon dreadnoughts, but there was something about it that demanded attention. Its dark hull seemed to drink in light, and energy crackled along its weapons ports. It moved differently, too, faster and more agile than anything its size should be. Jake Morrison looked at the tactical display showing 30 enemy ships. The odds were impossible, but humans had always done the impossible. Open a channel to the lead vessel, he ordered. Amy Rodriguez nodded. Channel open, Captain. Vexillar's image appeared on the screen, his 4 eyes now focused on Jake. For the first time, Jake saw uncertainty in the alien's expression. Commander Vexillar of the Kraxon hegemony, Jake said calmly. I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Terran Union. You have attacked our station and threatened our people. You have one opportunity to withdraw from human space. This is your only warning. Vexillar's mandibles clicked rapidly, his species equivalent of laughter. One ship against my armada. Humans truly are as foolish as the reports suggest. You will die like all the others who stood against the hegemony. Jake didn't smile, didn't frown. He simply turned to his weapons officer. Sam, show them why Earth's children are different. Fire the graviton torpedoes. Sam Carter pressed the firing control. From the Defiance's torpedo tubes, 3 missiles launched. They were small, no bigger than shuttles, but they carried humanity's newest weapon. Each torpedo contained a graviton generator, a device that could create and manipulate gravitational fields. The torpedoes moved through space at incredible speed, far faster than any missile the Kraxon had encountered. Their point defense systems, designed to shoot down conventional weapons, couldn't track them properly. The first torpedo struck the Kraxon cruiser Annihilator. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to bend around the massive ship. The gravitational field generated by the torpedo compressed with incredible force. The 15-kilometer warship crumpled like paper in a giant's fist. Metal screamed and tore as the ship was compressed into a sphere no larger than a shuttle. In seconds, one of the hegemony's mighty cruisers had been reduced to a ball of compressed metal and organic matter. The second and third torpedoes struck their targets with similar results. Two more Kraxan ships, each carrying thousands of warriors, simply ceased to exist as functional vessels. On every bridge, both human and Kraxan, there was absolute silence. No one had ever seen weapons like these. The Kraxan had shields that could stop energy weapons, armor that could deflect kinetic strikes, but they had no defense against gravity itself. Impossible, Grixnor gasped, his voice breaking. No species has mastered gravitational weapons at that scale. Vexlar stood, frozen, all four eyes wide with shock. Three of his ships, the battlefield had become a graveyard of compressed metal. Three Kraxan ships, each representing centuries of military engineering, had been reduced to dense spheres floating in space. The remaining 27 ships of the hegemony fleet struggled to process what they had witnessed. Their sensors couldn't explain it. Their science said it was impossible. Yet the evidence floated before them. Commander Vexlar finally found his voice. All ships, evasive maneuvers, spread the formation, do not give them clustered targets. The Kraxan fleet began to spread out, moving in different directions to make it harder for the Defiance to target multiple ships. It was a good strategy against conventional weapons. But the USS Defiance wasn't carrying conventional weapons. Jake Morrison watched the enemy fleet scatter. "They're learning," he said to Lisa Jung. "But not fast enough. Launch railgun salvos, target the ships trying to flank us." The Defiance's railguns were unlike anything humanity had built before. They used electromagnetic fields to accelerate tungsten projectiles to 20% the speed of light. At that velocity, a piece of metal the size of a telephone pole carried the kinetic energy of a nuclear weapon. Sam Carter locked onto three Kraxan destroyers that were trying to circle around behind the Defiance. "Firing railguns," he announced. The tungsten projectiles were invisible to the naked eye, moving too fast to track. The first one struck a Kraxan destroyer's shields. The energy barriers designed to stop laser beams and plasma bolts couldn't handle the pure kinetic force. The projectile punched through the shields like they were made of paper, then through the ship's hull, then out the other side, leaving a hole 50 meters wide. The destroyer vented atmosphere and bodies into space. Its engines sputtered and died. Within seconds, it was a drifting hulk. The other two projectiles found their marks as well. One destroyer split in half, its structural integrity completely compromised. The other took a hit to its reactor core and exploded in a brief, brilliant flash. 6 enemy ships destroyed, Kate Phillips reported from her station. 24 remaining. On the Decimator's bridge, chaos was threatening to take hold. Grixnor was shouting orders to different ships, trying to coordinate a counterattack. Kexara was frantically analyzing the human weapons, trying to find weaknesses. And Vexlar stood in the center of it all, his 4 eyes blazing with rage. "Fire everything," he commanded. "All ships, concentrate fire on that vessel. Burn it from space." 24 Kraxan ships turned their weapons on the Defiance. Disruptor beams, plasma cannons, and missile barrages all converged on the single human ship. The space around the Defiance turned purple and orange with the energy of the assault. But the Defiance had been built for this moment. Its shields weren't like other human shields. They used a rotating frequency modulation that Danny Park had developed, cycling through different energy signatures thousands of times per second. The Kraxan weapons, calibrated for standard shields, couldn't maintain a lock. "Shields holding at 70%, Amy Rodriguez reported. "Danny's modifications are working," Jake nodded. "Return fire. Sam, deploy the antimatter spread." From ports along the Defiance's hull, thousands of microscopic capsules ejected into space. Each one contained a few atoms of antimatter, held in magnetic suspension. They were invisible to sensors, too small to detect, spreading out in a cloud around the ship. 3 Kraxan cruisers, eager for the kill, charged through the cloud. The first antimatter capsule that touched their hulls released its contents. When antimatter meets matter, both are converted entirely to energy. The explosion from just a few atoms was enough to trigger the other capsules nearby. A chain reaction spread across the 3 ships' hulls. The cruisers didn't explode. They simply came apart, their hull plating converted to energy in millions of tiny explosions. Within seconds, 3 more Kraxan ships were reduced to expanding clouds of gas and debris. "This is impossible," Grixnor screamed. "They're using weapons. That shouldn't exist." Antimatter weapons at this scale, graviton manipulation, kinetic projectiles at relativistic speeds. No species develops all of this at once. But humanity had. Faced with extinction, Earth scientists had thrown out the rulebook. They had taken every theoretical weapon, every impossible idea, and made them real. They had compressed a century of weapons development into 2 years. Lisa Zhang was coordinating the battle from her tactical station, her neural implant allowing her to process data faster than normal human limits. "Captain, 12 ships are forming up for a coordinated strike from above and below. They're trying to overwhelm our shields from multiple angles." "Let them come," Jake said. "Kate, prepare a graviton pulse. Not the torpedoes, the pulse." Kate's eyes widened. "Captain, we've never tested the pulse in combat. The theoretical model suggests it could affect our own systems." "Then we better make sure we affect theirs more," Jake replied. "Do it." The graviton pulse was another of humanity's impossible weapons. Instead of creating a focused gravitational field like the torpedoes, it sent out a wave of gravitational distortion in all directions. The effects were unpredictable but devastating. The 12 Kraxan ships moved in for their attack, weapons charging. They fired simultaneously, hundreds of beams converging on the Defiance. The human ship's shields flared and sparked, struggling against the assault. "Shields at 40%, Amy called out. "Fire the pulse," Jake ordered. The Defiance seemed to shimmer, and then a wave of distortion rippled out from the ship in all directions. Space itself warped and bent. The Kraxan ships caught in the wave found their instruments going haywire, their engines misfiring, their weapon systems failing. But more than that, the gravitational distortion affected the ship's structures. Bulkheads bent, corridors compressed, and hull plating twisted. 3 ships collided with each other, their navigation systems completely scrambled. 2 more found their reactor containment fields failing and had to eject their cores to avoid explosion. In seconds, the coordinated attack had turned into chaos. "Now!" Jake commanded. "All weapons fire at will." The Defiance unleashed everything it had. Graviton torpedoes, railgun projectiles, antimatter spreads, and conventional missiles all launched at once. The confused and damaged Kraxan ships couldn't mount an effective defense. Ship after ship fell to the human onslaught. The Obliterator took 3 railgun hits and broke apart. The Devastator was caught by a graviton torpedo and compressed into nothing. The Conqueror flew into an antimatter cloud and dissolved into energy. On Proxima Station, the crew watched in stunned silence as the mighty Kraxan fleet was torn apart by a single human ship. Elena Vasquez found herself gripping her console so hard her knuckles were white. "How many enemy ships remaining?" she asked quietly. 10. Her tactical officer answered, voice filled with disbelief. "One ship has destroyed 20 Kraxan vessels in less than 15 minutes. Back on the Decimator, Commander Vexlar was experiencing something he had never felt before. Fear. His species had conquered 17 star systems. They had never lost a fleet engagement. They had never encountered weapons they couldn't understand or counter. "Commander," Kexara said urgently, "I'm detecting a massive energy buildup in the human ship. Something new." Vexlar looked at his tactical display. 10 ships remained of his fleet of 30. The Decimator was the largest and most powerful, but that hadn't saved the others. "Can we retreat?" he asked Grixnor. His second-in-command checked the navigation systems. "Our hyperdrives need 3 minutes to charge." "Then we fight for 3 minutes, Vexlar said. "All remaining ships, full assault, hold nothing back." The last 10 Kraxan ships, including the massive Decimator, turned all their weapons on the Defiance. They fired everything they had, a desperate last attempt to destroy this impossible human vessel. The Defiance's shields flared and failed. Beams struck its hull, leaving scorch marks and melted armor. For the first time, the human ship took real damage. "Shields are down," Amy reported. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 7. "Return fire," Jake ordered. "Everything we have." The battle became a brutal exchange of fire. The Defiance's weapons claimed 2 more Kraxan ships, but the remaining 8 continued their assault. The human ship shuddered under the impacts. In engineering, Danny Park was performing miracles. When a power conduit exploded, he rerouted through backup systems. When the shield generators overloaded, he used the ship's hull as a conductor to dissipate enemy fire. He was keeping the ship alive through sheer determination and engineering genius. "Captain," Danny's voice came over the comm. "I can give you one shot with the Nova cannon, but it will drain everything we have." Jake looked at the tactical display. 8 enemy ships, including the Decimator. One shot to change everything. "Lisa, calculate the optimal firing angle to hit multiple ships," Jake ordered. Lisa's fingers flew over her console, her neural implant processing thousands of variables. "If we angle 15 degrees starboard, 20 degrees up, we can hit the Decimator and potentially 2 ships behind it." "Sam, charge the Nova cannon," Jake commanded. "Kate, help him with the targeting calculations. Amy, broadcast on all frequencies. I want everyone to see this." The front of the Defiance began to change. Panels slid back, revealing a weapon that looked like it belonged on a space station, not a ship. The Nova cannon was humanity's ultimate weapon, a device that could. The USS Defiance drifted in space, dark and silent. The Nova cannon had drained every system, leaving the ship temporarily helpless. Emergency lights flickered weakly as backup power slowly came online. The crew worked by the dim glow of their consoles, hands moving over controls as they fought to bring their ship back to life. Danny Park was in the heart of engineering, surrounded by sparking panels and overheated components. His team worked around him, replacing burned-out circuits and rerouting power from any system that still functioned. His uniform was soaked with sweat, his hands burned from handling hot components without waiting for them to cool. "Come on, baby," he whispered to the ship, his hands deep in a power coupling. "Don't give up on us now." The coupling sparked, and suddenly a section of lights came back on. One of his engineers, Paul Martinez, looked up from his own work. "Danny, we've got partial power to Deck 5. "Good, keep going," Danny called back. "We need shields and engines in the next 60 seconds, or we're sitting ducks." On the bridge, Jake Morrison stood calm despite the chaos around him. 5 Kraxan ships remained, and they were recovering from their shock at seeing the Decimator vaporized. Soon they would realize the Defiance was vulnerable. "Amy, any response from the remaining Kraxan ships?" Jake asked. Amy Rodriguez was working, with a damaged communications array, trying to intercept enemy signals. "They're confused, Captain. Their command structure is gone. The remaining ships are arguing about who's in charge." "That gives us time," Lisa Zhang said from Tactical. "But not much. Once they organize, they'll attack." "Kate," Jake turned to the young ensign. "I need options. What weapons do we have available?" "Kate." Phillips was running calculations on her partially powered console. "The graviton torpedoes need main power to launch. Railguns are offline, but..." She paused, an idea forming. "Captain, we still have 1 antimatter spread in the tubes. It doesn't need much power to deploy. But without engines, we can't position ourselves to use it effectively," Sam Carter pointed out. Jake thought for a moment. In the old days, before space travel, naval captains had to use wind and current to their advantage. They couldn't always control their movement, but they could use what they had. "Kate, calculate our drift pattern. Where will we be in 30 seconds? Kate's fingers flew over her console. "We're drifting toward the debris field from the destroyed Kraxan ships. We'll pass through the densest part in approximately 40 seconds. "Perfect," Jake said. A plan was forming in his mind. "Sam, can you modify the antimatter spread to use the debris as additional reaction mass?" Sam's eyes widened as he understood. If the antimatter reacts with the debris, it would create a much larger explosion, like turning their own ship's remains into a weapon against them. "Do it," Jake ordered. On one of the remaining Kraxan ships, the Punisher, Sub-Commander Thresher, was trying to establish command. With Vexillar dead, he was the senior officer, but the other ship captains weren't accepting his authority easily. "We must attack now while the human ship is vulnerable," Thresher insisted over the communications channel. "Attack with what?" Captain Morvex of the destroyer responded. "We've lost 25 ships. Our weapons barely scratch their hull when..." "Their shields are up. Their shields are down now," Thresher argued. This is our chance. And if they have more weapons we haven't seen? Captain Korvax of the Tormentor asked. What if this weakness is a trap? As the Kraxan argued, the Defiance drifted closer to the debris field. In engineering, Danny Park performed another miracle. He had bypassed 17 safety protocols and rerouted power through systems never designed to carry it. But he had done it. Captain, his voice crackled over the comm. You've got shields at 20% and minimal engine power. It's not much, but it's something. It's enough, Jake replied. All hands prepare for combat maneuvers. The remaining Kraxan ships finally noticed the Defiance's lights coming back on. Thresher made a decision. All ships attack now before they fully recover. The 5 Kraxan vessels moved toward the Defiance, weapons charging. They approached cautiously, spread out to avoid being caught by another graviton pulse or antimatter cloud. It was exactly what Jake had hoped for. Sam, release the modified antimatter spread, Jake ordered. The capsules ejected from the Defiance, spreading out in a cloud that drifted into the debris field. The Kraxan ships, focused on the human vessel, didn't notice the tiny capsules mixing with the floating wreckage of their destroyed fleet. Enemy ships entering weapons range, Lisa reported. Wait, Jake said quietly. Let them come. The Kraxan ships fired, their beams striking the Defiance's weakened shields. The human ship shuddered under the impact, but held together. Shields at 15%, Amy called out. Wait, Jake repeated. The Kraxan ships moved closer, confident now that their prey was wounded. They entered the debris field, pushing aside floating chunks of their former comrades' ships. Now, Jake commanded. Detonate the antimatter. Sam. Carter triggered the antimatter capsules. They exploded simultaneously, but this time they weren't just releasing their own energy. They were reacting with the metal debris, the frozen atmosphere, the bodies floating in space. The entire debris field became a massive explosion. The Kraxan ships were caught in the center of the blast. The Punisher's shields failed instantly, and the ship was torn apart by the explosion. The destroyer tried to reverse course but was too slow. Its engines, destroyed by flying debris, accelerated to hypersonic speeds. The Tormentor lost half its hull to a chunk of metal from the former decimator. When the explosion cleared, only 2 Kraxan ships remained functional, and both were heavily damaged. 2 enemy vessels remaining, Lisa reported. Both are venting atmosphere and showing minimal power signatures. Jake turned to Amy. Open a channel to the surviving ships. The view screen showed the bridge of one of the damaged Kraxan vessels. The alien commander was wounded, purple blood seeping from a gash on his head. Kraxan vessels, Jake said firmly. You have lost. Surrender now, and we will allow you to leave with your lives. Continue fighting, and we will destroy you. The wounded commander looked at Jake with his remaining functional eyes. You are just one ship. How did one ship destroy our fleet? Because we're human, Jake answered simply. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We survived ice ages, predators, diseases, and each other. We learned to turn anything into a weapon, to fight with whatever we had, to never give up even when the odds were impossible. Your fleet was powerful, but you made one mistake. What mistake? The commander asked. You threatened our survival. There is nothing more dangerous in this universe than a human fighting for survival. The Kraxan commander was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. We surrender. We will leave human space and never return. Jake nodded. You have 1 hour to make your hyperdrives functional. After that, if you're still in this system, we will finish what we started. The transmission ended. Jake turned to his crew, seeing the exhaustion and relief on their faces. We did it, Kate Phillips said, her voice barely a whisper. We actually did it. Danny, Jake called to engineering, can you get us to Proxima Station? I can give you 1/4 impulse, Danny replied. It'll take us 3 hours to get there, but we'll make it. As the Defiance limped toward Proxima Station, the 2 surviving Kraxan ships managed to activate their hyperdrives and fled. They would carry the story back to the hegemony, the tale of one human ship that had destroyed an entire fleet. On Proxima Station, Elena Vasquez watched the Defiance approach. The ship showed signs of battle damage, scorch marks, and hull breaches, but it was still flying, still fighting. "Open a channel to the Defiance," she ordered. Jake Morrison's face appeared on her screen. He looked tired but satisfied. "Captain Morrison," Elena said, struggling to find words, "you just saved not only this station but possibly all of human space. How did you do it?" Jake smiled slightly. "We did what humans have always done, Commander. We adapted, we improvised, and we never gave up. The Kraxan expected us to fight by their rules. But humans have never been good at following rules." Over the next few hours, as repair crews from Proxima Station helped patch the Defiance's wounds, the crew shared their stories. Danny Park explained how he had kept the ship running by using techniques that weren't in any engineering manual. Lisa Zhang described how her neural implant had let her process battle data at superhuman speeds, finding patterns and weaknesses in the Kraxan formation. Sam Carter talked about modifying weapons on the fly, turning theoretical concepts into practical applications in the middle of combat. But perhaps the most important story came from Kate Phillips, the youngest member of the bridge crew. She gathered the other junior officers in the mess hall, all of them still processing what they had witnessed. "I was terrified," she admitted. "When I saw 30 enemy ships, I thought we were going to die. But then I looked at Captain Morrison, and he was so calm. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because he had already accepted the fear and moved past it. That's when I understood something." "What?" one of the young officers asked. "The Kraxan were unstoppable because no one had ever really tried to stop them. Everyone fought them the same way, with conventional weapons and conventional tactics. But humans? We don't do." The two surviving Kraxan ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of hegemony territory, their hulls scarred and broken, their crews traumatized by what they had witnessed. Sub-Commander Threshar, now the highest-ranking survivor, stood before the Hegemony Council, delivering a report that would change the galaxy forever. 30 ships, he said, his voice shaking. "We took 30 ships to destroy one human station. We lost 28 of them to a single human vessel." The council chamber erupted in disbelief. The 12 members of the ruling body, each representing a different conquered system, couldn't accept what they were hearing. Supreme Counselor Drexmar, ancient and scarred from 100 battles, raised 4 arms for silence. "You claim one ship destroyed our fleet?" Drexmar's voice was cold. "The mighty Decimator, Commander Vexlar, all lost to a single vessel?" "Not just destroyed," Thresher corrected. "Obliterated. They have weapons we cannot defend against. Graviton, torpedoes that compress our ships into balls of metal. Antimatter weapons that turn matter into pure energy. A cannon that channels so much power, it vaporized the Decimator, and 2 ships behind it with 1 shot." The council members looked at each other with growing fear. For 300 years, the Kraxan hegemony had expanded without serious opposition. They had the largest ships, the strongest shields, the most powerful weapons, or so they had believed. "Show us the battle recordings," Drexamar commanded. The holographic display in the center of the chamber came to life, showing the battle from the perspective of the Kraxan fleet. The council watched in stunned silence as ships 15 kilometers long were compressed into nothing, as antimatter clouds dissolved cruisers, as the Nova Cannon's beam burned across space like the finger of an angry god. When the recording ended, the chamber was silent for a long moment. "How?" one council member finally asked. "How did they develop such weapons?" Thresher had been thinking about that during the long journey home. They were desperate, facing extinction, and humans, when faced with death, don't accept it. They become something else, something dangerous. On Earth, the reaction to the Battle of Proxima Station was explosive. Every news feed, every communication channel, every gathering place buzzed with the story. Humanity had been on the edge of despair, watching their colonies fall one by one. Now, suddenly, they had hope. Admiral Jane Chen stood before the United Earth Assembly, the governing body of humanity's home world. Representatives from every nation, every orbital habitat, every moon base were present, either in person or by hologram. The USS Defiance proved what we've always known. Admiral Chen said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our refusal to surrender, our ability to adapt, and our willingness to do whatever is necessary to survive. The Chinese representative stood. Admiral, can we build more ships like the Defiance? We can and we will, Chen replied. But it will take time. The technologies used in the Defiance are experimental and dangerous. The graviton weapons require exotic matter that's difficult to produce. The Nova cannon puts incredible stress on a ship's systems. We're lucky the Defiance didn't tear itself apart. But it worked, the American representative said. It saved Proxima Station and stopped the cracks in advance. Yes, Admiral Chen agreed. And now we have a chance to negotiate from a position of strength. 3 days after the battle, a message arrived from the Craxan hegemony. It was addressed to Captain Jake Morrison specifically, requesting his presence at a neutral location for peace negotiations. The fact that they asked for him by name, not Earth's political leaders or Admiral Chen, showed they understood who had really defeated them. Jake stood on the bridge of the repaired Defiance, reading the message. His crew gathered around him, all of them understanding the significance of this moment. They want to meet at Babel Station, Jake said. It's in neutral space, run by the Merchants Guild. They're guaranteeing safe passage. It could be a trap, Lisa Zhang pointed out. They might want revenge for their destroyed fleet. Maybe, Jake agreed. But I don't think so. They're scared. For the first time in centuries, someone stood up to them and won. They need to know if we're going to come for them next. Danny Park looked up from his engineering console. Captain, I've got the quantum drive back to full efficiency. We can be at Babel Station in 12 hours. And if things go wrong, Sam Carter added, we've still got a full complement of graviton torpedoes. Jake made his decision. Set course for Babel Station. Amy, notify Admiral Chen that we're accepting the meeting. Babel Station was massive. A cylinder 30 kilometers long spinning in the void between stars. It had been built by the Merchants Guild as a neutral ground for trade and negotiation. No weapons were allowed on the station, and the Guild's security forces, drawn from a dozen different species, enforced the peace ruthlessly. The Defiance arrived to find 3 Craxan dreadnoughts already waiting, but at a respectful distance, from the station. Jake took a shuttle to the station with only Lisa Zhang and Amy Rodriguez accompanying him. They were met at the docking bay by Guild representatives, tall, thin beings with blue skin and 6 arms. Captain Morrison, the lead representative, said, the Craxan delegation is waiting in Conference Chamber 7. We have assured both parties of complete neutrality and safety. The conference chamber was large, with a circular table in the center. On one side sat the Craxan delegation, led by Supreme Counselor Drexmar himself. The ancient Craxan was even more imposing in person, standing 3 meters tall with skin, like granite. On the other side, Jake and his small team took their seats. Captain Morrison, Drexmar began without preamble, you destroyed 28 of our ships. You killed thousands of our warriors. By all rights, we should demand vengeance. You attacked us first, Jake replied calmly. You destroyed our colonies, killed our civilians. We defended ourselves. With weapons that shouldn't exist, Drexmar said. How did your species develop graviton weapons and antimatter deployment systems? Our scientists say it should have taken centuries of research. Jake leaned back in his chair. Humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When you threatened our extinction, every scientist on Earth, every engineer, every theorist put aside their other work and focused on one goal, stopping you. We compressed centuries of research into 2 years because we had to. And can you build more such weapons? Drexmar asked, his 4 eyes studying Jake intently. This was the key question Jake knew. The truth was that building another Defiance would take months, maybe years. The resources required were immense. But the Craxan didn't need to know that. We can build as many as we need, Jake said simply. The question is whether we'll need to. Drexmar was silent for a moment. Then he placed a datapad on the table. This is our proposal. The Craxan hegemony will withdraw from all human space. We will return any human prisoners or slaves. We We'll pay reparations for the destroyed colonies. In exchange, humanity agrees not to share their weapons technology with other species and not to attack hegemony territory. Lisa Zhang reviewed the proposal on her tablet. What about the other species you've conquered, the ones who had their worlds stripped bare? That is not your concern, Drexmar said. It is now, Jake replied. Humanity won't stand by while you continue to destroy other civilizations. Here's our counterproposal. The Kraxan hegemony withdraws from all conquered systems taken in the last 50 years. You release all slave populations. You pay reparations to all affected species. Impossible, one of the other Kraxan delegates snarled. That would destroy the hegemony. No, Jake said. It would change it. You could still be a powerful civilization, but through trade and cooperation, not conquest. The galaxy is changing. What happened at Proxima Station proved that no one is truly unstoppable. Not you, not us, not anyone. Drexmar's mandibles clicked slowly, a sign of deep thought. And if we refuse? Jake stood up. Then we'll build more ships like the Defiance. We'll share our technology with every species you've conquered. We'll turn your former victims into your worst nightmare. The choice is yours. The negotiations continued for hours. The Kraxan tried to bargain, to threaten, to find some advantage. But every time they came back to the same reality. One human ship had destroyed their finest fleet. What could 10 such ships do? Or 100? Finally, as the station's artificial day was ending, Drexmar made his decision. We accept your terms, he said, the words clearly painful. The hegemony will withdraw from the conquered systems. But know this, Captain Morrison. You have upset the balance of power in the galaxy. There will be consequences. There always are, Jake replied. But that's better than extinction. The treaty was signed that day. The Kraxan hegemony, which had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, began its withdrawal from conquered space. Species that had been enslaved for generations suddenly found themselves free. Worlds that had been stripped of resources began the slow process of rebuilding. And at the center of it all was the story of the USS Defiance and her crew. The tale spread from world to world, growing with each telling. Some versions said the HFY Defiance destroyed 50 ships, others said 100. Some claimed Captain Morrison had challenged Vexlar to single combat and won. The truth was impressive enough, but my